do, I am honored to introduce Dr. Mcdougal. Dr. Mcdougal, please welcome everybody and say a few words if you.
I would like to welcome everybody and thank you, Gustavo, for making this happen, for bringing out the best in me. That's what Gustavo's going to do. I am a medical doctor. I've been in this business for 47 years. I'm 68 years old. I love practicing medicine. I think I know what I love most. I love seeing patients. You would think that it would get repetitive, it would get boring to see 10,000 people. You think it would get repetitive. You think it would get uninteresting to talk to lots of people I've talked to over the years, but it never does. There's always new people, new challenges, new minds to change. People come up to me, and I hope you will someday too. People come up to me and they'll say, I'm sure you get tired of hearing this. And then they'll tell me about how something I've written, something I've talked to them about, some idea they picked up related to some of the work that Mary, my wife, and I have done over the years. And they'll tell me how it changed their life. No, I never get tired of hearing about this. This is what makes people feel good, knowing that they've hurt other people, that they've helped other people. That's what keeps me going, to say the least. Something kind of wonderful happened yesterday. I got a birthday present. It really wasn't my birthday present. It wasn't my birthday, but I did get a birthday present. It was from the Quarterly Review of Biology.
Oh.
Quarterly Review of Biology, and that's July 2015. And it's an article about the importance of dietary carbohydrate in human evolution. Of dietary carbohydrate, that means sugar. The importance of dietary carbohydrate in human evolution. And I read it, and I thought when I read it, I don't mean to be pushing any of my products, but the latest book I wrote is called The Starch Solution. This article could easily be an appendix to this book for the scientific reader. It talks about how crucial sugars are in human evolution and human development. You have all kinds of mixed messages out there from people. They tell you should eat no carbohydrate, starches are bad, sugars are bad, you need to eat all the meat you can stuff in your face, all the oil that you can eat. Well, that's not true. I know that's not true because I'm a scientist, I'm a doctor. I've read that material. I'm a person who's passionate about the scientific literature. And when I see a synthesis of that work put together in the Quarterly Review of Biology, which, by the way, is open access. It's free. You can get it on the internet. The Quarterly Review of Biology in July of 2015, the importance of dietary carbohydrate in human evolution. Now, I sent that to many of my friends and fellow scientists, and I said, you must keep this reference. Because even some of my friends, some of my medical doctors and scientists I work with, they get confused. You know, how do I explain this or how do I explain that? All these so-called experts are telling us, don't eat potatoes, don't eat rice, don't eat corn. I usually just kind of brush them off by saying, what do you mean don't eat rice? That's what's powered Asians for 10,000 years. What do you mean don't eat potatoes? That's the food of the Incas. What do you mean don't eat corn? Well, the Mayas and the Aztecs, they're known as the people of the corn. It's starch. And that's what my whole nutrition message is about. You must get the bulk of your calories from starch, rice, corn, beans, potatoes, sweet potatoes, other kinds of grains, with some fruits and vegetables. That is the human diet, and that's what this paper says, and that's what I wrote in the Starch Solution book. And actually, if you go back to all my books, which started in the early 80s, you'll see that I've had the same message. The Mcdougal diet is a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. That's one sentence. The second sentence is it avoids animal foods and oils. And boy, that's what I wanted to tell you this morning. That's what makes me happy was this synthesis, this confirmation. It would be an easy thing for your doctor to receive, for you to read, to get the confidence you need. The truth is out there. We have the truth. We have success. They got the money. That's just plain and simple the way it is. They got the money. But, you know, I'm a believer that if you tell the truth, everything works out.
Yes, now we have these live webinars. So we have a powerful tool, Dr. Mcdougal. And I printed that article that you sent, and I hope that maybe sometime you will have it available on your website, because it is really an amazing article. And I also have my book all the time. I want to encourage people to get it, and not only get it, but read it over and over, because it is an amazing book. Thank you. So what, can we dive into the questions then?
Let's do that. We're not here to promote books, just knowledge.
Exactly. So one of the first question, I think, is very pertinent to this webinar, because it's it says, how and why do starches work so well for health and fuel in the body?
Well, it's because the human being is designed as a starch eater. I mean, it's just like you wouldn't take a kitty cat and throw a potato down in front of them and say, enjoy. You know, you'd have a dead cat in a short period of time. There's a diet best designed for human beings. And that diet is based on starch, rice, corn, potatoes. It's the way evolution occurred. Why is it particularly good? Why are starches particularly good for people? Well, they're easy to find. They're easy to get. They're easy to store. There's lots of calories in starches. Whereas if you were going to choose animal foods, say we were an animal food eater, like lions are, I mean, you go out, you hunt and kill, your food is sparse. Once you kill it, you better eat it, because it rots really quickly. Carbohydrate starches are good in the sense that they metabolize slowly. They go into the body very slowly, and as a result, you have this long train of food that goes into your system. It's not sudden. It's in the gut for hours, sometimes days, and so you receive energy for a long period of time. Glucose, sugar, which is the base product of starch, is that's the primary source of energy of cells. Cells use glucose, and if you can't, it's the most efficient form of energy also. And if you can't have glucose in your system, you're in big trouble, particularly in pregnancy. That puts a real strain on pregnancy. There are certain cells in the body that don't run at all without glucose, like kidney cells and red blood cells. And the brain's primary fuel is glucose, sugar. And so having these available makes the body run more efficiently. If it doesn't have sugar, glucose, starch available, then it has to go through a process called gluconeogenesis, where it takes protein from your body. I mean, if you're not eating sugar, the body is taking protein from your muscles and turning it into sugar to power these cells that need glucose. Glucose, starch, ideal food.
Right. Dr. Mcdougal, do different people metabolize starch differently?
Let's see. Starch, no, I don't think so. There are people who have trouble with certain other sugars, simple sugars like lactose. That's kind of a specific type of sugar that's found in mammalian milk. And as a baby, all different human beings metabolize ideally lactose. But as we get older, what happens, say around 4 years old, most people lose the enzyme lactase that metabolizes lactose, so they can't metabolize that sugar. But a lot of people retain that enzyme throughout adult life, and they can drink milk. But that's a simple sugar. As far as starches, I can't think of starches that people can't metabolize. Some have a sensitivity to the protein in certain starches, such as those with celiac disease. They have problems with a gluten moiety that's found in large amounts in wheat, barley, and rye. But it's the protein, not the sugar they have problems with. So few people are allergic to certain starches, not many. You can pretty much switch from one kind of starch to another. Just because you're Asian, it doesn't mean you should particularly be on rice. Just because you were born in South America doesn't mean you would live better on potatoes. They're all good food, good sources of energy. Right. Concentrated, clean energy.
Exactly. Do you, another question is, what foods should one avoid completely?
Okay, these are called food poisons. I just call them food poisons. I mean, I'm getting to the point. I've never been politically correct. I'm not that kind of person. I call them food poisonings. In June of 2014, I wrote Dr. Mcdougal's color picture book on food poisoning and how to cure it by eating beans, corn, rice, and potatoes. And it's actually a free download. Basically, everything's free on my website, but there's a free section you click on. It brings it up in 22 different languages. And it's a color picture book that explains to you what food poisons are, and I will categorize them in two categories. One is animal foods. Any animal food you should consider a food poison, be it a direct animal like a fish or a cow or a pig, or a byproduct of an animal such as a secretion of an animal such as milk, or what would you call an egg? A dropping? I don't know. What do you call an egg? Something that comes out of an animal's body. Any animal foods you should consider food poisons. And the other large category of food poisoning is vegetable oil. That means extracting the pure oil from the olive, the corn, the safflower, flaxseed. When you extract the oil, you leave everything behind, and what you have is a chemical, a concentrated, isolated oil, which is highly toxic, makes you fat, promotes cancer, gives you greasy skin, etc. Now, when the oil is in the plant, in the corn or the orange, etc., it's mixed with other ingredients that make it safe and usable, very usable. So it's isolated oil and animal foods. Those are food poisons. They are the major food poisons. There are two food poisons. Well, some people think of them as food poisons. I don't exactly. If you overdo it, they are. There are things that that make the diet more enjoyable, which have been really scapegoats for what's wrong. And these two, what other people consider food poisons, and you can overdo it, are salt and simple sugar. We use these, as Mary Poppins says, a little sugar makes the medicine go down better. We use a little bit of simple sugar on the oatmeal, a little bit of salt in the food because it really makes it taste good. But those two ingredients have been identified as the major culprits of illness. It's distracted the public, the scientists, the media. It's been a distraction, a deadly distraction away from what's really killing people, which is the animal foods and the oils, but particularly the animal foods, because the animal foods are costly not only for us in terms of giving us heart disease and cancer and diabetes and kidney failure, not just to us, but also there's this whole animal thing. I mean, everybody got so upset because this hunter killed a lion a couple of weeks ago. One lion. Hey, drive down Highway 5 and you'll see tens of thousands of cows, stinking cows being killed. Okay, the other thing is we're killing the planet. I am so glad that the politics of today are now focusing, our upcoming presidential contests are focusing on climate change, whereas 8 years ago they didn't, nor did they much 4 years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, with one change in thinking, and that is you're going to get your sources of calories from starch, rice, corn, potatoes, pasta, breads, things you love. With that one change, you can make such a difference in the world. Your personal health, so you'll be stronger to fight the battles we need to fight. The animals around the world, which I am a big sympathizer for these days, and the planet, global warming, environmental destruction. We can change that like overnight if we get the food thing right.
Right. When you talk about salt and sugar, you're talking about adding it on the food sparingly and not while cooking it, right?
Well, that's what we recommend. There are people who are salt sensitive, and of course sugar. Well, let's just say it. We say it now, I have to say it 1,000 times because there are people who would like to see my message confused. So when I talk about starch and carbohydrate and sugars and so on, they go, white table sugar, that's the problem. White table sugar, this is what kills people. Well, white table sugar is just white plain sucrose, just plain sugar. And it doesn't have any fiber or vitamins or minerals with it. It's just empty calories. And white sugar, when you eat sufficient amounts of it, will rot your teeth, causes acids on the teeth and rots them. And also in sensitive people, this excess sugar causes the fats in the blood to go up, called triglycerides. If you use a little on the surface of the food, you get maximum taste with the tongue and minimal amount of simple sugar. So that's the way I recommend it. Salt, likewise, salt, if you overdo it, and you really have to overdo it, or you really have to be sensitive, then maybe your blood pressure will go up. That's about it. Maybe you'll swell a little bit. Maybe if you have a tendency to have high blood pressure, it will go down if you lower the salt. But you really have to lower it extremely, not just a little bit, I have to lower it. And salt tastes so good. Remember, the tip of the tongue tastes with pleasure salt, because you are a seeker of minerals. And likewise, it tastes with pleasure sugar, which should have been sweet potatoes, corn, rice. But industry has discovered these stimulants, these powerful stimulants that we have that affect us, and they put it in everything, in all the foods, loaded with salt and sugar and so on. It just loaded it. And as a result, it makes these things addictively attractive. Maybe I'll use that word.
Right. Do you think it makes a difference using maple syrup, real maple syrup, as opposed to just plain sugar?
No, I think they're all about the same. You're not picking much difference between honey, molasses, maple syrup, brown sugar, white sugar. Basically the same. They'll give you a nice pleasure stimulus. If you overdo it, you're eating empty calories. You could get into nutritional imbalances. You could rot your teeth. But I'm just trying to win the war. And if I can get you to eat the potatoes and the rice, the corn and the pasta by making you a nice sauce with a little salt and sugar in it, and you'll eat just a whole pile of this starch, then you and I have won. You'll start losing the weight, the arteries will start cleaning out, the bowel movements will be great, the multiple sclerosis will stop, the rheumatoid arthritis will go away. And I just want to win the war. I'm not trying to be perfect. It's just I want to,
Yes. We know what you mean. There is a battle to win, and we cannot concentrate on these little details.
Right.
Dr. Mcdougal, fats or saturated fats, over what percentage is harmful in a daily diet?
Fats, or saturated fat, I didn't quite get the question. Saturated fat is animal fat, basically. When industry talks about saturated fat, what they're talking about is meat, poultry, cheese, dairy, eggs. But they use the word saturated fat to confuse the public, because the public doesn't identify saturated fat with food on their plate. So it's a term used to sell food and to divert the public from actions that they could take. You ask, what percent of fat should you have in your diet of saturated fat? Is that the question?
The question is fats and or saturated fats. I don't know. This is how it was phrased. Over what percentage is harmful in a daily diet?
But in general, the foods are made, and I have to believe that sometime in history, some plan created nature. And it was created perfectly, and there is a best diet, perfect diet for people, best diet, a human diet. I teach that. It's a starch-based diet with the addition of fruits and vegetables. And that diet naturally is about 7% fat. Saturated fats are very small in that diet. There's there are all kinds of types of fatty acids that are in there. You generally say they're polyunsaturated fats. That's probably more detail than we need to get into. The word saturated fat should bring to mind to you somebody's talking about meat, poultry, dairy, eggs. The human diet is naturally low in fat, but you can tolerate more fat. I mean, fat's there for making storage. Fat gets into your body fat so you can store for difficult times, winter, times of famine, war. So you have seasonal high-fat foods like nuts, seeds, avocados, which you get up in the 80–90% range. But they're healthy. They're just real rich, real fatty. So if you eat the food naturally, you're going to be eating a diet about 7% of the calories will be fat, 80% carbohydrate, 80% sugar, which is carbohydrate, which is the starch we're talking about.
So 7 to 10% would be a good
number. It would, Gustavo, but I'd like people to stop thinking in those terms, to stop trying to calculate the number of calories they eat or the percent of fat, because it's all there in the food. Just focus on the foods. You don't have to say, how many potatoes do I have to eat? You just say, I eat all the mashed potatoes I can stick in my mouth. I just don't add a cup of butter to it or a cup of oil to it.
Right.
You have to just get the ingredients right. The human body is designed correctly. There is no mistake in the human design. So if you present the human being with the right food, it functions at its best, it feels its best, it lives its longest, it looks its best, just the way it is. It's just like a lion. You give it the right food, and it does well. My kitty cat does terrible on sweet potatoes, but he does wonderful on intermittent lizards and birds and mouses that he catches out here in the yard. It's a perfect design. It's been working for hundreds of millions of years. So focus not on these numbers. They'll drive you nuts. They'll give you false leads. Your food is primarily starch. How much? Well, you look at the plate, you go 70, 80, 90% of that food on my plate is rice and or potatoes and or sweet potatoes and or corn. And to that, I added a little bit of kale and broccoli and these non-starchy vegetables. And maybe I'll have a fruit or two after whatever break. And that's your food. That's what you eat. You eat as much as you can. Your hunger drive is not wrong. Your palate, your taste buds are not wrong. Your hands are not wrong. Go out there and try and tear mice apart. No, it doesn't work. I mean, everything's right. And we've made such a difficult thing out of it that people don't know what to do. They're so busy trying to get the paycheck in to try and take care of their kids. And how can I sit down and calculate the calories or read all this? You don't have to. And at the same time, you cut your food bill by 40% and you save the planet. Yes. You do.
So basically, for this next question, it's the same answer. This person asks, what about limits for protein each day? If we eat the right foods,
you can't. There has never, ever, 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 ever been a case of dietary protein deficiency in all of scientific or world history reported on any natural diet. Now, protein toxicity is real and kills. It's called rabbit, like in the bunny rabbit starvation. You get your calorie intake around 40% protein, you start getting sick. And people do this when they live on Arctic type diets that don't have much fat in the animals. That's why they pick the rabbit. When people go up in the North Pole and explore, and all they have walrus and whale to eat, they do fine on fat. But once they get into lean animals, they get rabbit starvation and people die. So excess protein is easy to get. I gave you the extreme excess protein in the amount Americans eat, damages their kidneys, causes their bones to dissolve, it gives them osteoporosis, causes kidney stones, enlarges and damages the liver, just in the amount that the typical American eats. To design a protein diet, let me give you an extreme as far as low protein. Walter Kempner from Duke University had a special diet called the rice diet, which I talk about in my December 2013 newsletter. Now, Walter Kempner is one of my biggest heroes, mentors. And he would take people with severe hypertension, not the mamby-pamby stuff that regular doctors treat, severe hypertension, severe kidney failure, severe heart disease, inflammatory arthritis, severe obesity. And he put them on a diet of rice, white rice he used, juice, fruit, and table sugar. Sometimes he had to make half the diet simple sugar. It was 93% carbohydrate. Now, the reason he added the sugar to the rice is 5% of the calories are protein in rice. And that was too much protein for some of his kidney failing patients. Too much stress on the body, 5% of the calories are protein. The American diet is maybe 16% protein. These high protein diets that people are eating could be 50, 70% protein. So 5% of the calories in rice are protein. So he added table sugar to cut the protein content to about 2 to 3% of the calories. And his competitive doctors who didn't like Walter Kempner, who wanted to see him fail, they actually took his patients, they took 8 of them, put them in a metabolic ward, and studied them for any deficiencies on the rice diet and found no deficiencies. You will find that research paper linked in my December 2013 newsletter. You can read the paper of his enemies, so to speak, people who wanted to see him fall, and how they tried to prove the Kempner diet was nutritionally inadequate because it was made of rice and sugar, and they failed to do such, and they were honest enough to publish it. These days, they just throw it in the garbage and say, hey, let's sell them more steaks. Let's sell them more pork chops. You know, we're not going to tell them about this. Just, hey, bury that. This is business, not science. Who cares about your mother or your sister or your daughter? Don't get me going, Gustavo.
No, I won't get you going. Let's switch to another popular topic here, which is high blood pressure. There's a question. Someone asked, how long after the dietary changes can someone begin to think about reducing blood pressure medication? My husband has been on blood pressure medication since age 31. Now
Right.
he's 54, and she says, lost 20 pounds. When can he expect his doctor to be open to the idea of coming off the blood pressure medication?
Well, those are two questions. When should you expect your doctor to be open? In general, never.
Right.
It's a sad situation that physicians, and there are many exceptions. So when I generalize, please understand, I know there are exceptions. There are many exceptions where doctors have tried to practice conservative medicine, but most doctors, they live by the adage that if the patient dies with a big bag full of drugs next to her bed, I've done a good job and I won't get sued. And they're afraid to take people off medication. Your doctor is afraid to take you off medication or reduce it. In my newsletters, you look under Hot Topics, High Blood Pressure, there's an article called How I Treat High Blood Pressure. I believe I published it in 2009. And that newsletter tells you how I, as a physician, as a board certified internist, as a doctor who's practiced 40 some years, how I take care of my patients, and I've taken care of more than 1,000 patients. We've published our results in the October 2014 Nutrition Journal. It's a free publication, open access on 1,615 people. I also published another study about 12 years ago on 500 of our patients. Same results. Immediately, the blood pressure starts to drop as soon as you change someone's diet. What I do in a clinical situation, I'm a real doctor. I really see people. Next Friday, I see 50 people. I'll be their doctor. And what I do is when they come in with blood pressure medication, is I stop all their medication that moment. Unless I think they're, really sick and really, really high blood pressure, which is rare. Unless I think the patient's worried about what I'm going to recommend. People get scared when I do this. Or unless they're on beta blockers, a class of drugs that should be reduced more slowly, and then I cut them in half every 2 or 3 days. But otherwise, sick people take drugs. Sick people take drugs. My goal as a doctor, your doctor's goal should be the same thing, is to get you healthy. Sick people go to surgery. Healthy people don't have their abdomens and chests littered with scars. Your goal as a patient, or those of you listening as doctors or other health professionals, those of you who are dietitians, your goal, those of you who are mothers-in-laws, your goal should be to get people around you healthy. And the way to get people healthy is to fix the problem. The problem is the food. People are suffering from food poisoning, from eating animals and oils, and you cure it by switching to starch, rice, corn, bean, potatoes, with a few fruits and vegetables. That's it. That's it. And then you use a few medications, and I do use a few medicines. Don't kid yourself. I'm licensed in 5 states. I'm a board certified internist. I'm the real deal. I got a prescription pad. I do write prescriptions. I write prescriptions for type 1 diabetes, insulin. I write prescriptions if my type 1.5 diabetics, which you call type 2, if they lose too much weight, develop symptoms of diabetes, or worry about the numbers, I'll give them a little insulin. I write high blood pressure medicine, usually chlorothalidone, if their blood pressure is sustained at 160 over 100 millimeters of mercury. I don't know. There are a few other drugs I use. I use a few statins once in a while, but I'm a pretty simple country doctor. Look at it that way.
Yeah. So there are cases where you would actually prescribe blood pressure medication.
Yes, if the blood pressure is sustained at 160 over 100, I will prescribe medication. It's usually a simple, almost free, very inexpensive diuretic called chlorothalidone. It is the safest, time-honored, best tested, most effective medication. But hey, we got fancier stuff with price tags of $3-4 a pill that we're going to get your doctor to sell you.
Okay. There's another topic now, high cholesterol. Quite a few people ask it about. They have been on a plant-based starch-centered diet, and they still have their triglycerides running high. Could you comment on that?
Yes, okay. Triglycerides and cholesterol are different. They're different chemical structures. They kind of hang around together because people who eat rich foods will often have high triglycerides in their blood, which is fat. Like if you take the chicken soup and put it in the refrigerator, a glob of fat will form on top. If I take your blood out through a needle and I let the tube sit on the counter, a layer of fat will form on top, and that's triglycerides. So that's different than cholesterol, which is a ring-structured chemical. But they generally go up. You know, people who are sick, they get high blood pressure, high body fat, high triglycerides, high cholesterol, high sugars. That kind of goes together with that common denominator of bad food. Our average drops in cholesterol, and this is published in the two papers I cited, the most recent being the October 2014 Nutrition Journal, which is free. Our average drop in cholesterol in 7 days, no medication changes, in 7 days was about 23 milligrams per deciliter. Divide that by 38 and you get international units. So, you know, about 2/3 of an international unit. In 7 days, no medications. Triglycerides, they went down a little bit, not much. Some people who eat a lot of food, and they hit the desserts. We serve desserts at our clinic. We serve some brownies and some chocolate pudding and a few apple strudel type things. Yeah, I know you remember, Gustavo. There are people always remember those. And we get a little brown sugar on this cereal in the morning. Well, there are some people who are sensitive to these simple sugars. Too much fruit will do it. And what happens is their triglycerides will go up if they eat a lot of these simple sugars. I just cut the simple sugars, and they get more reasonable in their eating as they, you know, people come to our program thinking they're going to starve to death. They're not going to like the food. They're not going to get enough to eat. I must eat as much as I can. That meal that Mary prepared for us, that was good, but I'm sure she'll prepare an unpalatable meal next time. So I better eat everything I can possibly put in my face. Soon people get comfortable with it. It's going to be a lot of great tasting food. It's going to keep coming. They're going to easily be able to prepare it, and they satisfy their carbohydrate needs. They fill up their glycogen stores, and their whole appetite changes. Instead of being a ravenous eater, they're satisfied. It's like some of you can probably relate to some of your addictions in the past, like smoking cigarettes. The best cigarette of the day was in the morning after you'd been without it for a while. Same thing with heroin, I'm sure, and cocaine and things. If you withdraw from it for a while, the impact of the next one is so good. We don't let you withdraw from carbohydrate, from starch, from sugar. You never get a chance to withdraw. You're always filled and satiated. And so what was once an uncontrollable appetite, when once you were an obsessive compulsive overeater, you now have control. You don't understand what happened to my mind. Nothing happened to your mind. You just ate what the body's looking for. You're just full of food heroin, food cocaine, food nicotine. You're just full of the substance your body's looking for. So you're not a ravenous addict out there anymore. That's all there is to it. And it happens quickly. As you remember, Gustavo, and some of the listeners who've been to our program, it takes about 3 days, maybe 4 days, and everything gets under control, and you love the food. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. This is in no way an exaggeration. You can do it living on mashed potatoes and water if you want.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, I totally agree. Dr. Mcdougal, about diabetes, maybe a little bit. Some people ask about, they have been on a plant-based diet following the program, your suggestions, and the blood sugar has improved tremendously, but it's not quite there yet. Is that the case where you would actually prescribe something, some prescription drug?
Let me clarify on what I think they're saying. People are told they have type 2 diabetes, which used to be called the adult type diabetes, but so many children have it now, we just got rid of the term adult type diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is where the body has been paralyzed to the activity of insulin. You develop insulin resistance. The pancreas is still making lots of insulin. It makes as much insulin, sometimes twice as much insulin as somebody without diabetes. That's type 2. By definition, it is 100% curable. 100% curable by changing diet and associated weight loss, or just the weight loss, it's about 80% curable. Even with bariatric surgery, you can cure 80% of the type 2 diabetics. Just losing the weight. Now there's type 1 diabetes, which is at the other extreme where the pancreas is exhausted. It doesn't make insulin. These are what we used to call childhood diabetics, but actually half the people who get this are over the age of 18. So they have a non-functioning pancreas. They die if they don't get insulin. They get ketoacidosis and die. They must have insulin. In between type 2 and type 1, there's a spectrum, which I call type 1.5. It's partial pancreatic insufficiency. You're making enough insulin to keep yourself out of the hospital, but not enough insulin to keep your blood sugar at, say, 100, divided by 19 if you want international units, 100 milligrams per deciliter. And that's okay with me. I mean, as a doctor, if their blood sugars are, and they're in good health, even if they're not in good health, but if their blood sugars run 150, 180, it doesn't trouble me. Troubles a lot of them. I prescribe medication for type 1.5 diabetics, those with partial pancreatic insufficiency. I prescribe long-acting insulin. The brand I use is Lantus. I prescribed it under the following circumstances. If the patient loses too much weight, and they can if they have type 1.5 diabetes because the sugar can't get into their cells, the fat can't get into their fat cells because they don't have the insulin. That's what insulin does. So if they lose too much weight, I'll put them on a little Lantus at night, a little injection. If they develop symptoms of diabetes such as excessive urination, I'll put them on a little Lantus. Or if they worry about the numbers, you know, this is psychologically devastating for many people, for their doctors, for their mother-in-laws. They say, well, doctor, my blood sugar is 190. You know, I really fight if it's 140, 130. I really tell them, look, you shouldn't be upset about that. Let's say it's 200, 250. They go, hey, it drives me. That's all I can think about, doctor. Well, you ought to stop taking your blood sugar so often. But I'll occasionally put them on a little bit of Lantus for that. I hate to do it, but I have to treat the whole patient.
Okay. Dr. Mcdougal, we are running out of time, and I know that there are a lot of questions to be answered, but I want to point out that on your website, there is a really good feature. It's the search feature, and people can type a topic there, and it's just amazing all the information that comes up. The person that did your website did an amazing job with that. And I want to remind people about that feature because probably some of the questions that they asked, they can be answered if they do that.
The search feature is really well done. There's also something called.
Yes, no, I was saying that I wasn't aware until recently of how it worked, but it's really good.
Well, there are a couple other things that people should know. People, if Gustavo and I have stimulated your appetite to eat more starch and to learn more information, there are several things that I'd like to point out to you, and it's all free. There are no gimmicks. Mary and I were given this great gift over 40 years ago of good health. As you learn about me, you'll know that as a young man, I was sick and dying. But I was also a very frustrated doctor, not being able to help people. That's the main reason I changed. So what we tried to do along the way is to help people for nothing. Yes, we have to make a living. Yes, we have to charge you to go to Hawaii with us in Costa Rica and to come to our 10-day program. But everything you want is free. And you'll see it quickly on this well-organized website. The search engine, as Gustavo pointed out, is phenomenal. We have a discussion board where there are people who are extremely knowledgeable. In fact, I go to the discussion board myself all the time because I learn things from other people. I mainly learn about papers like this or what's going on in the news, and TV. So go to the discussion board, join in, meet some great people. There's another section on my website called Hot Topics. Hot Topics Medicine, Hot Topics Nutrition. So say you had high blood pressure, you'd go Hot Topics, and then you'd go hypertension. And you'd find the first article was the one I talked about, how I treat high blood pressure. Hot Topics Diabetes. First article is the easy treatment of diabetes. Hot Topics Nutrition, protein, meats. First article is when friends ask where you get your protein. So it's all there. I've spent a lot of time. Since 2002, I've been publishing these internet newsletter articles. They're all free. They're all for you. So yeah, let's go change the world. Let's go change the world. Gustavo, can I just, there's something I've been thinking about how I'd like to end each show, and I don't know whether it will come off well or poorly.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, let me try. There are three things that I would like to be known for, and I may have been introducing just some confusion. It's the statement that people love to hear good news about their bad habits. So when chocolate comes up on the newspaper, you read it, you love to hear, or wine, people love to hear good news about their bad habits. The second statement is one that I hope you'll stop and think about, and that is that I cannot feel your pain. I can't feel your pain, even though I'm a doctor. And when you meet other people, your friends and relatives, and you look at them and you say, well, they look fine to me. You know, how could they be suffering? Just like yesterday, I had my haircut, getting ready for this show, and the person who was making me look better, she started talking about how horrible her feet felt, and she couldn't, you know, she could hardly work anymore. And this is somebody I've depended on for years, but I couldn't feel her pain, Gustavo. I cannot feel your pain, but I know it's there. And I can't fix all your pain, but I can fix a lot of your pain with this food message. And then the last thing I'd like to be known for is this statement, and that is that civilized people take care of their children. Like, for example, we don't allow kids, little children to work in these factories, or mines. In our country, little children doing this kind of gruesome work. And also we protect children, particularly in the sex trade. Civilized people protect their children. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States, in Europe, in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, our citizens are not protecting our children. They're sick, fat, and dying because of the food poisoning. Well, when are we going to wake up? When are we going to do what decent people do, what human beings do? If you're over 21, you want to do whatever, hey, you're over 21. But if you're dealing with a 3, 4, 2-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, a little girl who's precociously sexually maturing at age 8, and you know how it's going to destroy her life, or a little boy can't run on the track field, or a teenager has acne all over their face and they're socially disgraced. Excuse me, civilized people take care of their children. And those are the three things I want to say, and I may end up saying those at the end of every single, maybe I'll get a fourth, but those are the three things that I just can't stop thinking about those things, Gustavo.
Well, I think that those are perfect, Dr. Mcdougal, and you should repeat that. Particularly, I'm around children all the time, teaching and doing activities, and I think that we maybe in the future you can do a couple of webinars about, because there were questions about how to to adopt a healthy diet. I think that's very important, because as I've read, this is probably the first generation that will live less than their parents if we continue this way of eating.
And if we stop global warming.
So I want to thank you again for being here today, and encourage everybody to join us in the next webinar, which is on a Saturday of August 29th at the same time. And we'll get to all the other questions that I have here. And in the meantime, have a great weekend, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Gustavo. And thank you all for listening. It was a real pleasure for me to be up and have a chance to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.